All right, let's roll. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into the Week 10 edition of SIN Sunday Sideline Report. I am Mike Rifkin. Thank you for joining me. We'll preview the Week 10 action of the NFL slate today and go through some other big news across the National Football League. But we'll just start with the game that's taking place right now in Germany. I believe it's in Munich, if I'm not wrong. The Bucs lead the Seahawks 7-0. Tom Brady with a 30-yard touchdown pass to Julio Jones. So that is the Bucs 7, the Seahawks 0. In the middle of the second quarter, the Bucs are driving down the field once again. But let's dive into the big news of the week before we go further into the game in Germany and preview today's action. News came down, I believe, Thursday. Thursday. Karl Racine, who is the Attorney General of Washington, D.C., put this out on Twitter, and I'm going to read it to you from his own personal Twitter account. Breaking news, I'm quoting here. My office is suing Commanders owner Dan Snyder, the Commanders, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, and the NFL for colluding to deceive district residents, the heart of the Commanders fan base, about an investigation into the toxic workplace culture. After public reporting revealed that sexual misconduct, harassment, and misogyny ran rampant for decades at the team, the defendants promised D.C. residents that the league was going to fix this toxic culture, including by fully cooperating with an independent investigation. This is a threat, so that was all a lie. Instead, the NFL turned a blind eye to Snyder's extensive efforts to silence or intimidate witnesses, and the NFL and Commanders entered into a secret agreement that gave Snyder power to veto the release of any results. With today's lawsuit, we're standing up for D.C. residents who were lied to and deceived, and we're standing with the brave victims and employees of the team who told us the truth during our investigation and came forward about what they suffered and witnessed while working. Because these actions largely took place outside of the district, we do not have jurisdiction to specifically file suit regarding the workplace harassment and misconduct. By suing today, we are using every enforcement tool at our disposal to hold the Commanders, Dan Snyder, the NFL, and Goodell accountable. So, what's going on here in D.C. is everyone kind of knows what's going on when it comes to Dan Snyder. He's been accused of this for a long time. These bombshells have dropped over the last couple of years. And what the Attorney General of D.C. is saying is the NFL has worked with Dan Snyder to cover this up because it creates a terrible image for the league. Now I'm going to backtrack a little bit here because a couple of weeks ago at the owners' meetings, Colts owner Jim Irsay had said it was time for Daniel Snyder to be voted out as owner of the Washington Commanders. And Roger Goodell said there's an ongoing investigation. Things are got to happen before we get that far. I applaud Jim Irsay for having the guts to say it then, and I even applaud him more so now because I don't know what the NFL's plan is. I don't know. I don't know if this is truly a cover-up or if the league or if Roger Goodell's trying to protect one of his owners. I have zero idea. But everything that has gone on in Washington and everything we've learned about Dan Snyder and the Commanders over the last number of years is Dan Snyder is the black guy for the NFL. He is. He's a black guy. Everything you see, whenever you think it can't get worse in Washington, it gets worse. There was the ESPN story a couple of weeks ago. He has dirt on all the owners. He may have dirt on Goodell. No normal person is digging up dirt on their coworkers or boss if nothing shady was going on. It's time for the NFL to get rid of Dan Snyder, and whether that's this lawsuit or this should be the final straw. This should be it. And once the findings of all of the investigations are released, then we can go out on a limb and say, okay, Dan Snyder is done. That time period of Washington Commanders football is over with. And this is also on the heels of finding out that he may have had a second set of books and he's under investigation for that. It's just time for the NFL to cut him loose. And it's not funny. It's not sad. It's pathetic that the NFL continually lets him ruin not only his own organization, but ruin the sport. Ruin the sport because instead of talking about the games that are going on now, and there's the game in Munich, and there's a really good slate of games today that I'll get to in a few minutes, but I'm opening up on Dan Snyder, and I don't want to talk about Dan Snyder. The people don't want to listen about Dan Snyder. It's just, it makes everything worse by doing this. I don't want to foresee something like this happen. We've heard the testimony from some of the former employees. There's some, who've recalled their story, and we've read those. It's just at this moment, there's no one person bigger than the NFL. And I believe Dan Snyder has put himself in a position where he thinks because he's an NFL owner, because he's rich or whatever it is, he thinks he could do whatever he wants. And that's not how this works. It's not how any of this works. And so to own a National Football League team to own any sports franchise is a privilege. Dan Snyder does not deserve that privilege anymore. He deserves to be removed as owner of the Washington Commanders. We should not have to hear his name, speak his name, see his face. So at the end of the day, the NFL, Roger Goodell, who I'll get to in a second, it's just time to cut ties. There's no reason to protect this guy, because every time you go out and protect him, you hurt the credibility of your own staff and your own league. The NFL cannot be seen as credible here for as long as Dan Snyder remains in charge. And I keep saying it. I don't know if the NFL has the guts to do it. Release the findings to the Beth Wilkinson investigation. Release them. Let us know. Excuse me. We're the consumer here. We deserve to know what was going on, what had happened, why this is going on when it is. So we live in this world where we believe in so much, but there we are. And Dan Snyder is a, a bad individual who doesn't deserve to own a team. And I I don't want to go further, mainly for two reasons. One, I'm getting a little flabbergasted talking about it, and it drives me nuts because Dan Snyder is one of 32 people who can own who currently own an NFL franchise. And we could talk about the others in certain aspects of how we feel about them, but Dan Snyder legitimately should make people sick to their stomach. I'm trying to be nice there, but it's hard. It's hard. But Dan Snyder should not be an NFL owner anymore. We need to figure that out, or the NFL needs to figure that out as soon as possible that they can get him out. From what I've read, I've heard they were cooperating, but I don't know. And as for Roger Goodell, if you're culpable in this too, in this cover up, well, you probably have to resign as NFL commission, because why are you covering it up? Is it that bad that we can't know what's going on or what had happened? That's a problem for me. So Roger Goodell, Dan Snyder out for sure. Roger Goodell, you got some explaining to do. You got some explaining to do on if you covered it up, why'd you cover it up, what really took place in Washington. We deserve to know, and I think the fans of the Washington Commanders need to know what did they now what did they support, because I'm not gonna say everyone supported Dan Snyder, but what was going on behind the scenes of the team they're rooting for? What was going on there? We need to figure that out, and as soon as we do, I guess that would be the end for Dan Snyder. But at the end of the day, that's what's going to happen. Dan Snyder's got to go. All right. So, as I said, week 10, pretty good slate of games. Bucks, Seahawks going on right now. The Bucks actually just scored again. This time it was Leonard Fournette with a 1-yard run. Bucks are up 14-0 late in the second quarter against the Seattle Seahawks. With a win, the Bucks will go to 5-5 and will remain in first place in the NFC South. Talk about Thursday Night Football. Let's just segue into it, because Thursday night featured two teams from the NFC South as well. It had the Carolina Panthers defeating the Atlanta Falcons by a score of 25-15. In that game, Eddie Pinheiro was a star. I mean, he made made 4 field goals. Dante Foreman, 31 carries, 130 yards, at a touchdown for Carolina. PJ Walker, better than he was last week, 10-16, 108 yards. Marcus Mariota, 19-30, 186 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. And Mariota was not good in this game. Let's just face it, bad decisions, bad reads. I don't know if the weather had impacted him, but Carolina's front 4, front 7, they were getting after him. He was only sacked. He was sacked 5 times, but they were in his face all night long. And Atlanta, when they trail, they can't run the ball, and that's when they're most effective, is when they run the football. But Younghoe Koo misses 2 extra points, which can't happen. One, fantasy team. Come on, young boy. But two, you need the points. This is a team that Atlanta's not a team that's going to score 30 a night, 30 a week. They're not going to do that. That's not who they are. They have to run the ball, play ground control. Uh, they play ground control to Major Tom all the time. That's how they roll. But they were able to run the ball a little bit. They had 138 rushing yards, but when you're trailing in a game, you're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to control the clock because you got to go, and Mariota had a couple of times where he threw balls right to defenders, balls that wound up being dropped. Carolina ran the ball for 232 yards, almost 5 yards pop. Foreman 130. Laviska Shenault had a 41-yard touchdown run. Former Jag. And look, it's a good win for Carolina, who, to be fair, should have beaten Atlanta the first time they played a couple of weeks ago, had the referees not called that penalty on DJ Moore. So Carolina gets a little bit of revenge. They move to 3-7 on the year. Atlanta goes to 4-6. Now next week, the two team Atlanta will host Chicago, and Carolina's going to Baltimore next week. So that's an interesting one. It's actually really two interesting ones if you look at it, just based on standings and stuff. So Carolina gets a nice win. If Tampa wins today, they'll be back at 500 and be a full game up on Atlanta, who they've already beaten this year because of that terrible call on Grady Jarrett. Just an atrocious call. So there's that. So Carolina beats Atlanta. Tampa's currently beating Seattle. On to Indianapolis, where this is a story that if I didn't know it, I thought it'd be fake. But the Colts earlier this week fired head coach Frank Reich. I'll get to that part in a minute. And they hired Jeff Saturday as the new head coach. Jeff Saturday, who was currently working at ESPN. He's the interim head coach of the Colts, but he coached high school football. That's the best I could give you. I don't get it. My guess has always been maybe he's there to evaluate the offensive line, which has been not good for this year for the Colts. It hasn't been good. Maybe he's there to see if he could spark this team. I have no idea what the plan is for Jeff Saturday right now. So Jeff Saturday comes in. He replaces Frank Reich, who was fired. And listen, I'm not going to come out and celebrate a guy being fired. That's not fun. But I think the Colts are the biggest disappointment in the NFL. I know a lot of people will point to Denver, but I could go and say, well, Nathaniel Hackett's a first-time head coach. You could give me the Raiders, but Josh McDaniels isn't an NFL head coach. And ironically, the Raiders and Colts play today. So remember, Josh McDaniels actually took the Colts job and then just said, no, I'm going to go back to New England. Now he's the Raiders coach. So there's that. Now the Colts, for me, have holes. But for me, they should be the best team in the AFC South. I love a lot of their pieces. The offensive line was supposed to be really good. Matt Ryan was supposed to help this offense. Jonathan Taylor was coming off that phenomenal year last year. Michael Pittman's a stud. The defense, really good. And it hasn't clicked for whatever the reason may be. The defense, because guys have been in and out, like Shaq Leonard, who I believe they put on IR. Matt Eberflus left. He's the new head coach of Chicago. I don't know if the Leonard thing has a big impact, but does Eberflus? I don't know. And look, I've said this a lot on the Wishbone Shotgun podcast. Check that out. Google, Spotify, Anchor, wherever you get your podcasts. I've always felt the one thing that Colts team has lacked is a number one wide receiver. And I like Michael Pittman a lot, and he's got a lot of upside. You need someone opposite him. You need a guy. If you're going to win in the NFL, you need a guy. And the Colts are one of those teams where they never spend up to the cap. They always draft fairly well, and they prioritize their picks. And if you go to this past offseason, think of all the big name receivers that were moved. We're talking Tyreek Hill. We're talking Devontae Adams. I don't know why I'd like that Devontae Adams. Amari Cooper was moved. And then there were free agents, guys like Jarvis Landry and still Odell Beckham, but I don't think that's in play anymore for them because they're not going to win this year. Let me phrase it. I don't think they're going to win this year. So where do the Colts go from here? That's the ultimate question, because if Jeff Saturday's great, awesome, cool, he's the guy. I'm rooting for Jeff Saturday, even though he's going to coach on Sundays. The question for me is who's the quarterback. Like the Colts, and I don't remember who put it on Twitter. It may have been Robert Griffin III. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think it was him. The Colts have never recovered from Andrew Luck's retirement. They just haven't done that. So they have to figure out not the short term, because that's all they've done the past couple of years. Philip Rivers was short term. Carson Wentz was short term. Matt Ryan is short term. Who is your long term solution at quarterback? And here's the other problem. Is that guy going to be available in the draft, or do you think you could pull the trigger and make a trade for someone? Had Justin Fields continued to struggle, I would have said, pull that trigger tomorrow. It's worth the upside. But that doesn't help you now, because Chicago, he's playing well, and Chicago's got their guy. Is Mac Jones going to be available after the season? I'm not sure. You know what I'm saying? I have no idea if Mac Jones is going to be available. I have no idea who. The Raiders are struggling. Is Derek Carr going to be available? And again, what's the price going to be on a trade for Derek Carr? Garoppolo's a free agent, but that feels like a stopgap guy again, and that's all you've been doing. So the Colts need to figure this thing out, because they are wasting a lot of talent, and they've invested a lot of money in that offensive line, and guys like Shaq Leonard. They need to figure this out quickly, who they think they could go get to be their next franchise guy, because let's be honest here about the AFC South. It's very winnable over the next couple of years, because Houston is got a lot of draft picks. They're rebuilding that whole organization. The Jags are taking steps, but they're not there yet. And the Titans are good, but where are they after Ryan Tannehill? Malik Willis has played the past couple of weeks. He's played okay. I haven't seen enough to say, boom, that's a guy. That's their guy. So they need to figure that out quickly. So Jeff Saturday and Frank Reich. Also weird because they bypassed a couple of guys who have coaching experience, guys like Gus Bradley. You know, so that's an interesting play there for the Colts. Here's the question going into the offseason. Let's say Jeff Saturday's not the guy. How tempting is that job? How much, how is that going to be a sought after job? You know what I'm saying? Like Carolina, I think could be because Carolina's got a lot of talent. I know they trade McCaffrey, but DJ Moore. We're starting to see signs of life from Terrace Marshall. Foreman and Chuba Hubbard. Assuming they bring Foreman back. Defensively, Brian Burns is a stud. J.C. Horn, Dante Jackson, Jeremy Chin. They've got players there. And here's the benefit to the NFC South as opposed to the AFC South. Who knows? Outside of Brady, the other three teams are in the same boat. Like the Saints have a lot of talent. They don't have a quarterback. Atlanta, Marcus Mariota is not the answer. I'm waiting on the Desmond Ridder experiment to see how that goes. And Carolina needs a quarterback. PJ Walker's not the answer. Baker Mayfield's not the answer. Sam Darnold is still seeing ghosts. He's not the answer. So Carolina's got to figure out the quarterback position too. So right now there's two coaching vacancies going into the offseason. In my opinion, there's probably going to be maybe 3 or 4 more, if I'm being really honest about that. One's to be determined. Actually, probably a couple are to be determined, but that's a story for another day. Jeff Saturday makes his debut today against the Raiders. The irony in all of this, because Josh McDaniels didn't want the Colts job. He took it, then he went back to New England. So there's that. All right, we are at halftime in Munich, Germany. Bucks lead 14-0 still. Tom Brady to Julio Jones, 31 yards, gave him a 7-0 lead. Leonard Fournette, a 1-yard run, gave him 14-0. So it's 14-0 Bucks as we stand right now at half. Now, Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, said he wants to play more games in Germany going forward. I think he wants to play 4 by the end of 2025. I believe that was what his statement was. I'm cool with this. I don't mind the NFL sending games out into Europe. I love when the NHL does their global series, so I'd kind of be a little bit of a hypocrite if I said I hate the fact that the NFL does it. And I think eventually I think they're going to revisit doing the NFL Europe League, which was something that existed, I think, in 90s into the 2000s. So maybe they revisit doing that again. I don't think Goodell can base a team in London itself, but if we're going to go all out, and the NFL is going to play games in London, and they're going to play games in Munich, and let's have fun with it. Let's go to a lot of different places. Let's see if we can get games in Italy. Let's see if we can get a game or two in. I was going to say France, but I'm not sure how the French feel about it. But if you can get something in Italy, in France, and some of these other places, cool. Globalize the game. I'm always for globalizing the game, expanding the game. It's fun. It's fun for the fans. It's a fun experience for the players. Now, if the players come out and say they hate it, that's a different conversation. But I haven't heard anything on that. So that should be that. Listen, if you want to play more games in Germany, as long as it doesn't hurt us, I'm okay with that. So there's that. So let's move to today's slate of games. And I'm going to start with the big one. And ironic because when you say the big one, it's usually the 4:25 kickoff or the Sunday night game. I'll talk about the Sunday night game. But 1:00, Buffalo, New York. The 6-2 Bills host the 7-1 Vikings. Now, all eyes are kind of on Josh Allen with his elbow. From everything I've heard as of last night, he's good to go. I have not heard anything this morning as of he's not playing. And if he's not, that would dampen my fantasy team, but that's a whole nother conversation. But, here's the thing I would say. On this. I look at on Allen. On Allen now going to the game. I know it would help my fantasy team, but you're 6-2. You're the Bills. I know you're 0-2 in the AFC East because you lost to the Jets last week and you've lost to the Dolphins. With the weather, downstate New York, it's raining. It's not nice at all. I would sit him. I would sit him. This is a long-term play here. The Bills have Super Bowl aspirations. And if Josh Allen goes down, that's going to hurt. This team could do its thing. I think this is a really good team. I think Sean McDermott is one of the best coaches in the league. Brandon Beane's done a great job bringing in talent, whether it's through the draft, free agency, trade. This is a really good football team. So, and it all hinges on Josh Allen. If Josh Allen plays well, this team could do big things. If he gets hurt in this game, what does that mean for the long-term success of the Bills this year? I'm not even thinking about next year because I got to think about this year first. So if Josh Allen gets hurt today, and arguments say, I'm not saying you never wish injury upon anyone. If Josh Allen's done for the season, your season's pretty much done. So that's my beef with this. So if Josh Allen plays, I'd be careful. But this is a huge game. This is a huge game for one team. It's a huge game for Buffalo to get back on track. But for me, it's a bigger game for the Minnesota Vikings. And I know people are going to say, Mike, they're 7-1. They're really good. They're going to win the North. I know they're going to win the NFC North because I'll talk about another team in that division that is just, I don't know how to describe them. I'll get to them in a little bit, though. The Vikings are 7-1. Their lone loss coming week 2 in Philly. But I think when we talk contenders in the NFC, we talk Eagles, we talk the Cowboys, we still, for some stupid reason, we still talk about the Rams. Get to them in a little bit too. We talk about the 49ers. And that's pretty much it. And then I think the Vikings come into that next level in the NFC because I think there is a large population of people that hate Kirk Cousins. And some of it warranted, some of it's warranted. Some of it I think is a little extreme. Excuse me, but this team right now they're clicking. They click offensively. Justin Jefferson's a stud. Thielen's still around. Dalvin Cook is awesome. They bring in TJ Hawkinson. He has a great debut last week. The defense is really playing well. Mike Zimmer, I don't know what happened with that defense last year, but Zadarius Smith has been great for them. Harrison Smith's been great. They make plays. I think they're a +6 turnover differential coming into today, which is near the top of the league. And I think a lot of people look and go, well, the one thing that holds them back is who the quarterback is. And I don't think that's fair to Kirk Cousins to a certain extent, because we're going to say, oh, I trust Jalen Hurts more than Kirk Cousins. Jalen Hurts hasn't had this opportunity yet. So we don't know. But I think if Minnesota can win this game on the road in Buffalo, I got to tell you that I think that changes everything for Minnesota, because then they think we could beat anyone on any given Sunday. We could beat potentially Philly. We could potentially beat Dallas. We could potentially beat whoever. So if the Vikings can win this game and they find a way to squeak it out, I don't care whether Josh Allen plays or not. If the Vikings find a way to squeak this one out, it changes everything in their season. Everything. Because they're going to win the NFC North. The NFC North is dead. It's buried. Unless the Vikings have an epic collapse, which I don't foresee, the Vikings are going to win the NFC North. So I'm not saying they have to win this game, but I'm saying if they do win this game, it's a massive win. Also, side note on this game, one of the rare trades where both teams actually won. When the Vikings traded Stephon Diggs to the Bills, and in the pick compensation that came back, the Vikings took Justin Jefferson. So 2 of the elite wide receivers in the NFL who were traded for one another play each other for the first time. So that's a pretty cool for me to say, because I thought the trade was a huge one for the Bills at the time, and Justin Jefferson's been nothing short of sensational for the Vikings. So Bills-Vikings, 1 o'clock in Buffalo, waiting on to hear on Josh Allen. And I think it's a big game for Minnesota. I really do. I think if Minnesota wins, I think it changes the landscape in the NFC. I really do. So there's that. I said I'd get to this other NFC North team, so I'll do it now. The Cowboys play the Packers, 4:25. I'm not talking about this because it's the Packers, but because the Packers season's over. On November 13th, 2022, actually, as of last week, so as of November 6th, 2022, the Green Bay Packers season's over. You go into Detroit and you lose a game that was very winnable, and Aaron Rodgers throwing red zone interceptions for no reason. Great plays by the Lions. I don't know. It's Aaron Rodgers. He's I don't want to say he's checked out. I don't want to say that because I think that's hard for me to say. But I think Aaron Rodgers is playing his last season with the Green Bay Packers. I don't foresee a way how next year he's there. I don't even think he retires because I still think there's a lot of good football left in Aaron Rodgers. He's a back-to-back MVP. You can't tell me that regression just hit him so quick. I can't foresee that. So I think Rodgers is done in Green Bay after this year. Whether they find a trade partner or I don't think they release him because of dead cap, but I think there'll be teams who will be interested. And I think Aaron has to sit down with the front office and be like, it's time. Listen, once I'm done, you can retire number 12. We all know once he's retired in 5 years after, because that's the waiting period, he's going to go to the Hall of Fame. That's a foregone conclusion. It's the end. For me, it's the end of an era because I just don't. I don't see how he's back there next year. And whether Jordan Love is ready or not, they have to figure that out too, because if Aaron's done, then we have to have a conversation of who's the guy going forward. And whether that's Jordan Love or someone else, the Packers are going to have to answer for this. So I think this is Rodgers' last year. And I like the Cowboys a lot today. I think the line going into today was like 5.5 or something. Let's see. Just give me one. All right, this is from ESPN. This line has the Cowboys at -3.5. I would hammer that because I don't know. I don't think this could be pretty. That Cowboy defense is legit, and the Packers do not score. They don't. And Romeo Doubs is now out. He was the one young guy at receiver who was playing who was starting to pick it up. So, I believe Christian Watson's also down. The defense has a ton of injuries now. Excuse me. So, I like the Cowboys. I like them a lot. And Mike McCarthy's return to Lambeau. So, it's hard for me to talk about Rodgers because I'm a big Aaron Rodgers fan. I'm, supporter. So I don't foresee how the Packers do it, but I don't think Aaron Rodgers is back there next year. All right. Also today, I brought up the Rams. They're going to play the Cardinals, and it looks like it's going to be a battle of the backups, although both Kyler Murray and Matthew Stafford are still considered quote-unquote game-time decisions. But if they can't go, it'll be John Wolford for the Rams and Colt McCoy for the Cardinals. McCoy. Kyler Murray has a hamstring issue. Stafford entered concussion protocol, so wait to see how that goes for both of those guys. But I'll say this: whoever loses this game is officially put a fork in them. They're done. Like if the Rams lose this game, I don't foresee them coming back. If the Cardinals lose this game, I don't foresee them coming back. But I was never a believer in the Cardinals, so that doesn't bother me as much. But for the Rams, I mean, this is a team that won the Super Bowl last year, and they have not played well. And at any phase, offensively, they're one-dimensional, and their one dimension is Cooper Kupp. Stafford hasn't played well. The offensive line hasn't played well. They haven't run the ball well. No one outside of Cooper Kupp is making plays. Allen Robinson needed an APB put out on him earlier in the year. Higbee hasn't done much. So they need other guys to start. And it starts with Stafford. Defensively, they play okay. What they're going to do. Donald's going to do his thing. Jalen Ramsey does his thing. And everyone in between has to do their thing. So that's where I'm at on the Rams. The Cardinals, look, I've said it before. I'll say it again. I felt the Cliff Kingsbury contract extension was unwarranted. I feel the Kyler Murray contract extension was unwarranted. And here we are. They're 3-6 going into today. Double check that quick. Yeah, they're 3-6 heading into today. So at 3-6, and let's think about some of their wins here for just a second. If the Raiders don't blow a 17-0 lead, they're 2-8. So it's just they're this team. The Cardinals were a fraud last year because everyone presumed once DeAndre Hopkins went down, and they lost that game to the Packers, and Hopkins got hurt later in the year, and they just faded. Wild card game against the Rams destroyed them. And now you look at this football team. What do they do well? Kyler makes great plays when he's moving out of the pocket, and I just go, is Kyler that guy? I know he was taking number one. I know what he just got the contract. Was Kyler the guy? Like we brought it up before. Like the Bills know Josh Allen's their guy long term. The Chiefs know Mahomes is their guy long term. I think the Bears have figured out Justin Fields is their guy for the long term. Is Kyler Murray the Cardinals? You gave him an unwarranted contract extension after he unfollowed you on social media. That's my beef here. Like we gave into this contract at this point, and it should be bothersome to people. But the Cardinals stink, and they haven't. They have all the weapons on offense you can want. Hopkins is back. Marquise Hollywood Brown, I know he's hurt currently, but he's there. Ertz is there. I think they need another guy in the backfield to go complement James Conner. Rondale Moore's played well the past couple of weeks. Defensively, they've struggled defensively. The corners aren't that good. They don't generate. I don't think they generate a lot of pressure. So they got things to figure out there. But again, if they didn't extend Kingsbury and Kyler, we can have a different conversation about this, because maybe there is a guy out there who can unlock Kyler Murray. I don't know who it is. Actually, I have an idea of who it could be, but I don't. That job's not going to be available, I don't think. The guy I'm thinking of too is Sean Payton, because Drew Brees wasn't the biggest guy, didn't run like Kyler. Maybe Sean Payton could be the guy who can unlock him. Update in Germany. The Seahawks have kicked the field goal. It is now 14-3 Tampa Bay in the early stage of the third quarter. So Jason Myers kicks a 55 yard. Damn, that's impressive. So, yeah, the Cardinals, they play the Rams. The loser's done. The loser of that game is done. And then Sunday night, we got the Chargers and the Niners. Excuse me. So the Chargers and the Niners, both teams actually are clinging to the number 7 seed in their respective conferences. The Chargers coming off a nice win over Atlanta last week after their bye week, found a way to get a win that they needed. They go to 5-3, but they don't look right. They just don't on offense. I don't know if Herbert's ribs are still bothering him. They won't have Keenan Allen again tonight. Mike Williams won't be in the lineup. So this offense is basically Herbert, Austin Eckler, and a bunch of dudes. That's what this offense is. And look, they make plays on defense. Khalil Mack made a great play on defense last week. So they have to find a way because they're banged up at so many other positions. And Brandon Staley, he's one of those guys I'm wondering about come the offseason. If this team misses the playoffs, how much is it going to be on him? How much is it going to be on the injuries? And how much is it going to be on something else? So that's a big question for me on the Chargers. Like, what are the Chargers going forward? I don't know. Herbert, I think Herbert's their guy. I still think they can use more weaponry on the outside for him. Defensively, they brought in Mack, brought in J.C. Jackson. He's done for the year. I love their safety tandem of Nasir Adderley and Derwin James. So they've got to figure some things out there in Los Angeles. As for the next, they're going to be healthy. Looks like they're going to get all their guys, most of their guys back who were banged up going into their bye week last week. Deebo Samuel looks like he's going to play. Other guys are going to play. The Niners are getting healthy at the right time. And with Christian McCaffrey now in this offense, and he's now been there about 2 weeks. I don't really count the Chief game. I know people will because they have to, but he got there Friday. He played Sunday. Then he had 1 full week of practice. Then he got the bye week, which is because he's coming off that game against the Rams where he had a rushing touchdown, a receiving touchdown, and a passing touchdown. So now all of a sudden you can draw plays where him and Deebo are in the backfield together. Kyle Shanahan can draw some fun stuff up, and we know how smart Kyle Shanahan is as a head coach. This is a team. I think this is the one team this is the one team I think lurking in the NFC. Like, if they get hot, they can make that run all the way through the NFC. I think this is the one team that Philly and Dallas, they don't want to see the 49ers because the 49ers are the journey song any way you want it. Because you want to have a shootout with them? They can do that. You want a defensive struggle? They can do that too. At the end of the day, this offense is so good with Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's not a Trey Lance knock. That's just more of a how much of a fit Jimmy G is in the system. So I gotta tell, this is the team. Like, for me in the NFC, that's the team I don't want to play in the playoffs. I don't want to see the Niners. And listen, they almost made the Super Bowl last year, and I think they've only gotten better. So that's the Sunday night game. The Monday night game is the Eagles and the Commanders. And so, wait to see how that goes for the Commander. We got some good games today. I haven't brought them all up, but I think there's a couple of Colts Raiders, not for good reasons, but that's an interesting one. If you want to go the other spectrum, Saints Steelers has an interesting feel to it at the end of the day, but loser that's probably done. Although the Saints are still alive in the NFC South, Titans Broncos has potential. Browns Dolphins is I think a very interesting. I think it's a trap game for the Dolphins, to be honest with you. Coming off that big not even emotional, but that tough game against the Bears. The Browns coming off the bye week after that Halloween beatdown of the Bengals. Jacoby Brissett returns to Miami after what happened last year. So interesting games all around the NFL. So enjoy them. Enjoy these games today because a lot of them should be entertaining and fun. So that'll do it for this edition of the Sunday Sideline Report on the Sports Insanity Network's YouTube page. Check out all the podcasts, Anchor, Google, Spotify. Follow the network on social media at SIN Real. That'll list off all the podcasts to listen to. Check out the website, www.thesportsinsanitynetwork.com for blogs, for vlogs, for planes, trains, automobiles. Meet the crew. So until next week, I'm Mike Griffin. Enjoy the football, everyone. Have a wonderful Sunday. And now